More streaming from home options this week, starting with Capone, which is an Al Capone biopic, but it takes place at the end of his life. And I'm just going to say I'm a little bit tired of the same however many, Italian mobsters being featured over and over and over. I'm like, are there not other criminals we could explore? Or even with like The Irishman or something like that. I'm like, can we just look outside the box of crime, please? Like, why are there only, X number of figures that we keep going back to? It stars Tom Hardy, and I saw a trailer for this, or it may have been like a recut trailer, and I was like, oh, actually, this looks pretty good. Like, Tom Hardy's a really good actor, so cool, fine, whatever, I'll give it a chance. And I will say the following: I cannot recall, and I'm sure there's one out there somewhere, but I can't recall a single Tom Hardy movie in which I can understand what he's saying. He is just so mumbly and gibberishy, and sometimes it feels like a character choice, and sometimes it just feels like he couldn't be bothered to open his mouth. And sometimes the performance really comes through independently, and oftentimes it does not. And this is one of those times where I was like, it did not. He plays Al Capone, and he plays him in, again, so this takes place in the last year of his life, and his brain is basically Swiss cheese because he got syphilis, and use a condom, kids, because syphilis will melt your brain like that. Obviously, like, it takes place, however long ago, and syphilis is treatable very easily, but just practice safe sex. I don't know. Is that the ultimate takeaway from this movie? I'm not sure, but there was no takeaway from this movie. And that was what my biggest frustration was. It took like 30 minutes and then they introduced this plot point. I was like, okay, cool. Maybe it's this. Like, maybe there's actually a story structure to this. Nope. Just a bunch of rantings and ravings. And it makes about as much sense. And, it's about as coherent as the mind of its subject. Because it is just Swiss cheese brain, like, actually projected onto a screen all over the place. Didn't make sense. Really violent and bloody in some parts. Some bodily functions, which, like, actually made sense to the scenes they were in. But, like, I don't want to say they're gratuitous. The violence was gratuitous. But overall, just, like, I was like, what is the point of this? And I was angry at this movie because there was so much squandered potential. Because it had Tom Hardy. It had Linda Cardellini, who I think is such an underrated actress. Like, she is such a great actress. I have loved her since, Freaks and Geeks was the first thing I saw her on. And I think she's just amazing. She actually probably gives the strongest performance in this. But Matt Dillon is in it. Kyle McLachlan. It's just, like, how do you have all this talent and just waste it? And this potentially was a giveaway that wasn't going to be great. But it's written and directed by Josh Trank, who did Chronicle, which was actually pretty decent. It was kind of like a low budget but good superhero movie, but he was also the screenwriter for Fantastic Four in 2015. So you got some highs, you got some lows. This is definitely a low. Don't waste your time on this. If you want to watch a great portrayal, or what I assume is a great portrayal of Al Capone, watch Boardwalk Empire with Stephen Graham, who plays him, because I thought that was a good, and obviously he has more time in that because it's a television show to play this character out. But I was like, this version of it was just unintelligible and not in a compelling way. So I'm only going to give it 1.5 out of 5 because even though I have a lot more time these days, it still wasted 2 hours of my life with this time. So skip it. The other show I want to give a shout out to is Upload on Amazon Prime, and it is from Greg Daniels, who brought the American version of The Office to the U.S. He's a creator of King of the Hill. He worked on The Simpsons, Parks and Rec. He's a creator of Space Force, which I'm really excited for, which will be out later in a couple weeks. I love the concept. The concept is basically there's like a cloud you can upload to if you are going to dying. So you could upload your consciousness, your body gets left behind. They can't put consciousnesses, to say that 10 times fast, back into bodies yet, but you can exist in this cloud. And I love the idea, like, there were microtransactions and people can afford different levels of storage, and just, it's in the not too distant future. And I thought it captured some of the branding stuff was really funny, just the way like conglomerations have evolved and like started to absorb each other. And there were just a lot of great jokes about that. Some of the stuff is just like a little overplayed for me. Like, there's a love story involved and these people are just like too good looking and they act too perfectly for how you would want one of these stories to play out. The big challenge is that the main character is an upload and is only digital, and he's basically like dedicated customer service rep is a real human still on Earth. And there's complications. I think there's a lot of really funny stuff in here. There's a lot of good comedy. I thought it was just going to be this kind of cheesy romance type thing, but then there's like a interesting mystery element that I was like, okay, all right, there's some stuff here. It's not perfect. By the end of it, I was like, oh, I want to see how this ends. And now I'm like, oh, I'd like to see season 2. So I think it's worth checking out if you have Amazon Prime. And then finally, Solar Opposites, which is on Hulu, which is from Justin Roiland, who did or does Rick and Morty. And it's very much in the style of Rick and Morty. And, the voices are similar. It's hard to differentiate. If you were like, close your eyes, you'd be like, oh, this is just Rick from Rick and Morty. They're aliens that have landed on Earth, and it's just them kind of like being aliens on Earth. And some of it's funny. It's very funny. I blazed through it. There's only 8 episodes. They're half-hour episodes. I really enjoyed it. If you like Rick and Morty, I think you will very much like Solar Opposites. If you are not into that at all, this is not the show for you, because much like Rick and Morty, it's in a very similar vein. I feel like it exists in the same universe as Rick and Morty. So if you're a fan of Rick and Morty and are excited by the fact that it has already just come back, like, here's even more for you to watch. So enjoy Solar Opposites.